a few years back when they were doing the open road tolling. He's a great friend of the City Club's, Jack Hartman. Jack, thanks for being with us today. Our first speaker today is the president of the Wirtz Corporation and chairman of the Chicago Blackhawks. His goal is simple: win the Stanley Cup championship every year. His top ally in taking the Blackhawks back to the top is the president of the Chicago Blackhawks, John McDonough. Together, they have rebuilt the front office, earned new and high-profile sponsorships, and started televising home games. There we go. There we go. Forbes magazine called the Chicago Blackhawks, and I quote, "the greatest sports business turnaround ever," unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, Rocky Wirtz and John McDonough. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Jay. If we could just start off our luncheon with just a short little film presentation. Well, yeah. I know if I touched it, I'd mess it up. And then John would get me in trouble. Well, thank you, Jay, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming, and thank you for inviting John and I to say a few words to you today. Let's just go back 2.5 years ago. And on October 6th of 2007, my father had died the end of September. And so I became chairman of the organization. And so anything I say is not to come here and criticize the past, but to look in the future. And it's very easy to say, if I'm in these shoes, I do this and that. But everything the Blackhawks did before I became chairman were for very good reasons. I worked very closely with my father, respect him dearly, loved him even more. But now it was time to make some changes, and it didn't matter, much. And I didn't realize how we were going to make these changes because, quite frankly, I had no idea. I had been involved with all our businesses, but nothing with the Blackhawks on a day-to-day basis. They were nice enough to invite me for the team picture every year. And if I was busy, they could airbrush me in. I asked them only if they could change my tie from year to year. But, and I wasn't here to criticize it. I've been a Blackhawk fan all my life, and they talk about the scooter line. They talk about, the years that, Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita, and I was a young man, and I saw Bobby Hull in a golf shirt, and I realized there's no one that can have arms like that. And this is way before steroids, way before anyone would ever, pump iron, and you realize Bobby did this in the hay fields in Canada. But what was important is we had to realize where we were. And we were an irrelevant sport in a very, very crowded sports environment, and a good one. I mean, Chicago sports are terrific. I mean, just run down. You have, we are co-tenants and own the building with the Chicago Bulls, and Jerry Reinsdorf had done a terrific job. He has 6 rings in one sport, and the White Sox, even though they didn't want to use it by name, I am a White Sox fan. And I'm sorry, John, 2005 was a really good year. But the job that Jerry has done is second to none. If there should be someone in the Hall of Fame for sports, it's Jerry Reinsdorf, what he's done in his life. And we tend not to look at his accomplishments. The Cubs are America's team. They've done a great job, and obviously I've been a Bears fan all my life. I remember watching Gale Sayers go one way and then go the other, and just those great years of Super Bowl winners and the Super Bowl just a few years ago. And now you get the Blackhawks. And there's nothing wrong with realizing you're an irrelevant sport in a crowded sports field, but the important thing is, what are you going to do about it? So we've had our first home game on October 6th, and our financial man, Max Mueller, said, have you seen the memorandum? I said, no, what memorandum are you talking about? He said, well, your father's been in the hospital for the last 6 weeks, but there's a memorandum floating around that said the Hawks are going to be out of cash by the second regular season game of the year. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, we got to raise money internally to pay the team between, let's say, October 10th and April 15th. He said, yeah, we do. So right then I realized it might be a little more dire than I had thought. I mean, I looked at our consolidated return. I know on an overall basis, Wirtz Corporation was very strong. We had no debt. Thank God for my grandfather and father. They left me with a clean balance sheet and something that, anyone could marvel at. But this is not one you could sit back and hire some consultants and take some time and evaluate the landscape and say, talk to people and get a focus group and say, what do you think? No, this is something we had to do right now. We had 3,400 season ticket holders. We didn't have a lot of renewals coming in. As I said, in the first payroll, we had gone through all our cash, and we had nothing. So the first thing we did is, obviously, we talk about televising home games. Well, that was a no-brainer. What I didn't realize is, when I went to Comcast Sportsnet, our partner, is that all the equipment for the year had already been spoken for. They said it was impossible to get sponsors that's late in the year in October to come and pay for the ongoing, and that we'd have to pay for these games out of our pocket, and at the most, we could put 10 to 12 games on. And so they thought that I was asking about next year. I said, no, I'm talking about this year. What are we going to do in addition? And I said, so if we have to, I said, we're in the beverage business, and I said, I'll go to our beverage partners and see what I can do about raising funds. And they looked at me and said, are you nuts? I said, no. This is a real flat organization, and we believe in the flat organization, everything we do. In Wirtz Corporation, our Wirtz Beverage side of the business, and the beer side, real estate side, and our banking side. And I said, no, this is a flat organization, and we're all going to be involved in this. So the first person I went to is Jerry Reinsdorf to ask him for his advice on what he would do, being a great sportsman, as we talked about previously. And he said, well, are you interested in being involved with the beverage business day to day? And I said, absolutely. He said, well, you better get a president. And I said, that's great. Now, Jerry, in your Rolodex, who do you have, who do you think could do this? And he said, well, quite frankly, I don't have anyone. You're on your own. Now, again, being from Chicago, it didn't take a genius to figure out that the Cubs had done a terrific job. I grew up in Winnetka all my life, and I couldn't find a White Sox fan for love nor money. I mean, even people up and down the street in 2005, until they realized that they were going to get their asses kicked, were still giving me grief. So I had never really been around the sports circle, so there'd be no reason for me to come, in contact with John McDonough. But I marveled at his work, marveled at his accomplishments, remember the days where they didn't open up the upper deck, and created a district called, Wrigleyville. And I said, any man that's that good, I said, he has to be on our side. And like our beverage business, this is a game of relationships. And I cherish, from an outside looking in, the job that the Cubs and John had done in his leadership of building relationships. And like our beverage business, relationships are with our suppliers and with our customers and ultimately with your employees. In sports, it's the same idea. Obviously, you have to have a relationship with your fans. You have to have a relationship with your sponsors. And ultimately, the people that write about you every day in and day out, is your radio, TV, and print media. Now, I think we had probably no relationships with any of those three. And that's not saying anything bad, but we just hadn't done a very good job at building those relationships. So again, not coming down from Mars, I realized that John was from Chicago. You wanted to have someone from Chicago. Resumes were flying in from every headhunter that you can imagine trying to get a fee out of this thing. And the best candidate was right in our backyard, and that was John McDonough. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is he had a pretty good job, and he didn't want to leave. So before I turn it over to John, because I think he's certain days when you're up 3 goals and you lose 4-3, he said, why in the hell, that Mesa looks pretty good right now. But John and I had a meeting, and I knew I had one chance to really sell him on the concept of reinventing this franchise, starting with a clean sheet of paper, approaching this as nothing bad was the past, but let's look in the future. How do you build relationships? How do you take these great young talent and really mold them and become important to the Chicago sports fabric? Our fans were angry at us. And again, there's nothing wrong with admitting that our fans were angry. The old premise that we had previously is we have a great young team, and it's like the Field of Dreams, the movie is you build it and they will come. I don't believe that would have happened. I don't care, Kane and Taves and everything they've done. When your fans are angry, they'll find every way they can not to spend money with you. And that's what we had. So we had to build a lot of bridges. And John, we were lucky enough on, November 20th is John? Mm-hmm. Came over to the dark side. But we can have fun in reinventing ourselves. And I think we were lucky enough to see some of the accomplishments that we saw on the screen before you. And with that, I want to turn it over to John because he's done a terrific job.
Thanks, Rocky. First of all, I just want to say how flattered and honored I am to be amidst all this greatness that is here today. Thank you for joining us. There are more people in this room than there were at my first Blackhawks game, so I really... And Rocky, by the way, as far as your shot at the Cubs are concerned, I did want to let you know, I saw a few leads slip away when I was there as well. But we're going to fix that. Thank you, Rocky. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's been a very, very interesting journey for the last 28 months. I thought aging in Cubs years was difficult. This has been a challenge, but it's been fun. I've had an opportunity to work with an owner that gets it, that understands the big picture, that realizes that if we are going to be a major market franchise, if we are going to treat our players and treat our staff and treat our fans in an elite way, that is exactly what I'm looking for. When we talk about the video that all of you witnessed, there's a lot more to the story than that. The operative word in all of this, however, has been change from day one. I remember on November the 20th saying goodbye to the Chicago Cubs, where I had worked for more than 24 years, hired the majority of the people that were there, and got in a limousine and came over to the United Center, and we had a press conference live on Comcast. And as I'm answering some of these questions, I'm saying to myself, first and foremost, dear Jesus, what did I just do? But as the press conference went on and I had a chance to dig a little bit deeper, I realized that as honest as Rocky is, and a man of principle, and a man of high integrity, there were a few things on that interview that he forgot to tell me. I'll cite you a few examples. After I addressed the staff, I asked to be introduced to the receptionist. I was told we don't have one. So put that on the list. We're going to resolve that. How are we going to resolve that? I'm going to ask to speak to the Director of Human Resources. Now the intern that's walking me around is getting ashen, and she's almost in tears. And she said, John, we don't have one of them either. So I said, all right, once and for all, let's get together with a person that runs the business operation. I saw her face beam, and she said, we do have one of those. He's part-time, and he's not here today. That put things into perspective, and I recognized that, that we had a lot of work to do. And there were a lot of changes that needed to be made and a lot of expectations. And one of the first hires that I made was Marie Sutero, who's in this room, our Director of Human Resources. And I said, Marie, if we're going to do this, please bring me great. We need to make some changes. We need people that are ambitious and enthusiastic and upbeat and want to be part of something that has never been done before, yet realizing at the same time we have a great product on the ice. So as the days went by, I recognized there was going to be more change than I thought. So I called Rocky and I said, Rocky, it's time for me to bring in the aircraft carriers. I then brought in Jay Blunk, our Senior Vice President of Business Operations, who is brilliant at what he does, a great difference maker in our franchise and really sets the tempo on many things. But I had to assess the entire organization. We hadn't been on television before. I came from the Cubs where our games on a daily basis with WGN-TV, predating Comcast, went into some 80 million homes every day during the day when we were virtually baseball's version of All My Children. And everybody wanted to see the Cubs. So our games with the Cubs, and then fortunate enough to partner with Comcast in my later years with the Cubs, that couldn't have been any better. And obviously with WGN Radio, 50,000 watt clear channel partner on radio, that was a place that we really needed to be to garner some respectability. But as we were going through the process, there was the painstaking of how good do we want this organization to be? Are we ever on any day, are we going to settle? Are we going to make decisions based on convenience? Or we can probably get away by not doing anything. Or let's let that go for now and we'll attend to that later. I couldn't subscribe to that. When I left the Cubs in 2007, I really at 54 wanted to find out how much was in the tank. I had absolutely no reason to leave the Cubs. They were going through an ownership transition. I was foolish enough to think that I would be part of that going forward. And, but I looked at this as almost any sports executive that's ever worked in the city of Chicago looked over at the fence and said, boy, I would really like to be a small fractional part of helping to bring that franchise back. Wouldn't that be amazing? Other variables that have gone into this. We have a really good team. So when we talk about the fact that the franchises come back and merchandising numbers are through the roof and television numbers are through the roof and all of these things, we have a very good team on the ice. We have a very good team off the ice. Our off-ice team, I believe, can meet the on-ice team stride for stride. So we've built an elite organization. But there was one other thing that was very important to me as we move forward. It was important that these two business units worked together, that there was only one language spoken at 1901 West Madison, that there wasn't going to be a hockey camp, and there wasn't going to be a business camp, that there was going to be a collaboration where we were going to understand each other. We were going to trust each other. We were going to listen to each other. And at the same time, we were going to address things immediately. In the back channels, Marie is bringing in great people. We're trying to lead them. Jay is doing things on the business side which have been nothing short of amazing. Witness the fact just recently he had our entire hockey team on the Jay Leno show the other night. I'm sure every owner and every team president in any sport that goes into Los Angeles is saying, hey, how did the Blackhawks pull that off? It's because of Jay Blunk, one of his many accomplishments. But we needed to make some changes on the hockey operations side, and they were very, very difficult. And they were changes that you were making very unpopular decisions on popular people. But Rocky did not hire me to be popular. He hired me to try to put the right people in the right places, given the right direction, having fun while we're doing this, trying to put a great product on the ice. And we found out something. As this hockey buzz that goes around very, very quickly, we found out that players wanted to play for the Chicago Blackhawks. That hadn't happened before. There were years that we did not charter where that has been going, charter our team to another city, where that had been going on for 30 years in many cities. Small things that we weren't doing for our players. That is the core of all of it. So a few years ago, when we were able to secure the Winter Classic, and that really changed in many ways the face of the Blackhawks, that in recognizing it was critical for us to have a strong, solid relationship with Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita and Tony Esposito and ultimately Dennis Savard, because they are the pillars of our franchise. We can't afford to be at war with them. It's impossible to sell the future if you're at war with the past. So these things were all very, very important. And when you're making these changes, some of them, to use a hockey term, on the fly, my expectations were not going to be diluted. We were going to bring in great people. The people, many people that are in this room, and I'm going to ask a table full of people to stand in the middle of the room. The reason that we are enjoying the success that we are today, and I give a lot of the credit to Rocky Wirtz because he understands what it takes. He's hired me to try and orchestrate this, but we have an amazing group of people led by Stan Bowman and Jay Blunk and Kevin Cheveldayoff and Al McIsaac and David Knickerbocker and Steve Waite and Brandon Faber and Pete Hassan. I would ask all of you to stand up. And Chris Werner, I purposely left your name out just to make you more nervous to see if I forgot. That is the reason we're successful. We have interesting dialogue. Some of the gentlemen that I introduced, and Marie Sutera, who I had already mentioned. Marie, stand up, please. Marie Sutera. Some of these people represent hockey administration. Some of these people represent the business side. They respect each other. They talk to each other. And they've done a phenomenal job. So 2.5 years into this journey, or 28 months into this, we haven't accomplished anything. We're 86 sellouts into it. I'm very, very proud of the job that Stan Bowman and Kevin Cheveldayoff and Al McIsaac, our hockey cabinet, have done. They were able to do almost the impossible at a very difficult time when the value of these players could not have been higher. They were somehow, amazingly, they were able to sign the future of our franchise, the bedrock of our franchise, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, and Duncan Keith. And for that, the organization and our fan base should be very grateful for. The downside, I'm very curious by nature. I like to ask a lot of questions. The questions might be short, the answers might be short, but I like direct answers. So as I'm trying to learn a little bit more about the game and go on every team's website every day and watch the NHL network and make sure that I keep an eye on what's going on in the business operation, one of the things that Rocky taught me early on in this process that's been difficult for me is when you get the right people in the right places and you inspect what you expect and you make sure that you're on these things, and communication is the hallmark of what you do, you have to find a time where you step back and allow these things to go on. There are meetings that go on behind closed doors at the hockey operations, where the hockey operations or business operations, that I'm virtually scratching at the door because I want to be in there, but I know it's best for the organization that I'm not. And ultimately, they come out and they tell me where they are on things. So this is an organization that I present to this group, and Rocky and I present to this group with tremendous pride. This is not a discussion today about where we've been. This is more about the importance of where we're going. Thank you very much.
All right.
And I want you to feel comfortable. There's not any question that John won't answer.
That's good. If you have a question, write it out. We have our folks here. Raise your hand. Go ahead, tweet. Yeah, I only wish they'd both been a little more articulate, don't you? I mean, geez, kind of sloppily going there. Thank you, Miss Action. All right, here we go. Starting off with Becky Brauffman. This is a very good question. I think, Rocky, you'll jump on this one. My family thanks you for televising the games. It allowed us to bond with our teenagers. Question: what should the NHL do to prevent the injuries recently suffered by Seabrook and Campbell? Obviously, suspensions don't work.
Well, I'll answer that. I know there's a vote going around the NHL governors about coming down harder on these headshots, and we've all seen or may have seen some of the shots, both to Brent Seabrook and to Brian Campbell. And Brian was shoved from behind and went in the boards and broke his collarbone and a rib. You know, with a very great player in Ovechkin from Washington, D.C., and there's nothing in this game for those kind of hits and or pushes or to hurt. So it's really a combination of two things. And Stan Bowman, I think, articulated that as, you know, the players have to respect themselves. And they realize that if they're going to do that to some player, that player can come back and do it to them, and that's their career. With all due respect, I mean, I have a day job and I'm very lucky. But this is all these players have as far as earning the kind of money they're going to be earning. And if they're taken out for the season or for their career, and heaven forbid you get a, you know, if Brian Campbell had his head up, he'd be paralyzed now. And these are very dangerous hits. So I think that the league will come down harder, but it's important to come down harder, but we have to self-police. And there is no area for this. I mean, James Wisniewski, who was a decent young man, had played in Chicago, went out to Anaheim, and I'm convinced that if they had come down harder on Ovechkin, there's no way that James Wisniewski would have gone from the blue line and hit Brent Seabrook. But we've had a number of those hits. And I don't know, Stan could tell us how many, but we've had so many concussions. We're not allowed to talk about how many head injuries we have, but there's been a lot, both currently and in the past this year. And these are progressive injuries, and there's something that it can't be allowed to happen. So we talk about fighting. Well, no one has a concussion from fighting, for all due respect. But these are very, very dangerous hits, and they have to stop. So I think between the league, the Players Association, and all of us putting our foot down and saying, this has to stop, it's going to work. But we have to be very swift. I mean, I just as soon as, if including one of our players, if we took a player who was out for the rest of the season, I think that our player should be suspended for the whole season as long as that player was out. And until you do something like that, I think this is going to happen.
Thank you, Rocky. You just knocked out of you just put in the penalty box Shelley Holtzman's question, but I'm going to read it anyway, Shelley, because you're not only our accountant, you're still the head of the Illinois CPA Society, right? All right. Good question, Shelley. Unfortunately, Rocky beat you to it. How about having the player suspended? How about having the player suspension be the length of time the player is out with the injury? You just said it. That would be a hell of a way to do that. And if you have a really bad player, really hurt, and a really good player hit him, you just keep your guy out for a couple of months. That's called Chicago politics, but we're not talking about that today. All right, Billy? Yeah, I thought so.
Paul, you're not the first one to think like that.
Spectacular. All right. I just rolled into my mind, Jay. I'm sorry. This is from Ray Asher, Little Heroes Pediatric Cancer Research Foundation. Are you in... Do you favor having hockey players, your players, and any NHL players continue playing in the Olympics?
Is that a question for myself or for
John, why don't you answer it, because I'll give him the truth.
Okay.
Have a face-off. I don't care.
This is a much debated issue. I don't believe there is a truth. I don't believe there is a right and wrong. I think there's a lot of gray. I think the fact that the Blackhawks had 6 players on the Olympics was amazing. How much branding all of this did for the National Hockey League is debatable. But I think it elevated the exposure to our league, which we sorely need. So now it depends. I would be able to answer that question in 90 days when I find out that I believe that is the window where the NHL as a league can take advantage of some of the success that it had. It is important for us to be playing on a global stage with which the Olympics provide. Thankfully, none of our players were hurt as we went through it. As we look forward in 4 years to the Olympics going to Russia, I think a lot of things have to be determined yet. So I probably don't have an exact answer. I think there's some things that time will tell.
Are you going to let that stand, Rock?
No, I don't think we should be in the Olympics.
Okay. Well, John...
That's why John is where he is and I'm where I'm at.
Let's see. It is 1:08 Central Time. I will hear from Mr. Bettman by about 4 o'clock Central.
I always say, I can't talk to the commissioner. John will take the call.
Okay, moving on. John, you're on a roll, and this is from Tom Leahy. Any advice for Mr. Ricketts? How's that, Rock, to stick?
I'm glad I wrote the question.
Whoever wrote that question, please stand up. Where's that?
They're pointing to him.
Thank you for asking that question. Well, obviously, he's doing a little bit better than we are because we're the warm-up act for his appearance on Thursday. Wednesday, I'm sorry. No, I don't think it would be fair for me to give Mr. Ricketts any advice. I think he's gotten off to a good start, and I hope good things for the Chicago Cubs, and it's much tougher than it looks. However, there would be one piece of advice that I would give Mr. Ricketts. It would be to spend about 2 or 3 hours with Rocky Wirtz. That would be the best advice I could give them. I think he would come out of that meeting with a better feel and a better understanding of how to ingratiate himself to the great fans of the city of Chicago.
Oh, you're invited Wednesday, Rocky. We'll set that up.
I'm serving lunch for John.
And maybe the commissioner.
Not easy. Okay, this is from Christy Hefner with a great opening line. Rocky, thanks for you giving nepotism such a good name.
Yeah, thank God, because I couldn't get a job any other way.
Yeah. And that's all for you, Rocky. John, how can you use mobile and social networking to build deeper relationships in more of your younger fans?
Well, I think if you take a look at the Blackhawk table, they're probably chuckling with great with great enthusiasm. I think we all realize that from a technology standpoint, it is moving faster than the speed of light, and I think we've done a great job taking advantage of all of that, evolving. We're fortunate. We just got on TV 2 years ago, so we're. We almost missed the entire television generation, so. But I think we have very, very, very capable people at our place that are on that, and I think that we're really, with the direction of Dave Knickerbocker and all of his people, I think we're really on the front end of mobile marketing.
I think, John, I think you were nice enough to invite me to that staff meeting, but if I remember the numbers, I think we have 160,000 fans on Facebook and 24,000 on Twitter. So if you come to the United Center, you'll see how young our fan base is, and I think some of that is certainly from the social medium and how to reach those people. Mind you, these are people that will not watch the 10 o'clock news, won't read either print media, will do everything either on the computer, and how do you reach those people that will not use traditional means to get their sports information?
Okay, good answers. Sort of turning in like you're in some Dublin Irish pub, is right? Two guys just sort of ripping each other. It's really good. I like it. Steve Condren from Condren Galleries. Where are you, Steve? We know this is a very artistic crowd. You know that, so make sure you have a lot of cards. I'm quite understand this, so be ready. What are your expectations for season pass holders to increase by this upcoming season? You mean the number of people attending or the prices? Attending. Is there any room for more season ticket holders? I guess that's the question.
I'm glad that that was your interpretation of the question. I'm not sure that's really what he was asking, but I will accept that. I'm sure he wasn't asking about pricing, because then I'd pass that on to Rocky.
We'd have Chris Werner come up here and talk.
We're very, very lucky that we had our season ticket base go from 3,400 to 14,000, and that we now have a waiting list of more than 7,000 people. Jay, it's easier for you just to stand up and take a bow saying that you're going to take credit for it anyway. So, but to go from 3,400 to 14,000, I think what we want to try to do is to provide as many people as we can with the experience to see Blackhawks hockey and not sell 17 or 18,000 season tickets and be very limited. Our organization really just got involved in the group sales business less than 2 years ago. So it's something that we hadn't pursued. So we really need to broaden our reach. We need to open our arms to as many people as we possibly can. And for those of you who have been to Blackhawks games, our demographic is amazingly young. I believe that one of the local dailies did a report, and the Chicago Blackhawks have the youngest and most affluent fan base in the city of Chicago. We just need to make sure that we keep them engaged and we earn this. We don't want this to be that comet that kind of came and went, and we have to make sure that those 7,000 people that are on the waiting list are engaged, and I know Jay and Chris and Dave Knickerbocker are working on that every day, because we have to make sure that if we hit a bumpy spot, if we lose 4 out of 5 games, that these people are going to be as committed as they always are. We don't take, I think this is something that we talk about all the time. We don't take anything for granted. We're not entitled to one fan walking into the United Center, no matter how many sellouts that we have. That's the approach we're always going to take.
Okay. We have 2 more questions. Actually, one is a request, so I will leave that for last. Bill Zola as a guest. Where are you, Bill? Raise your hand. There you are in the back. I'm not sure I understand this one either, but the first part I do, and I think we all agree. Thank you for bringing back Pat Foley. I mean, that's as long as it was impossible to bring back Lloyd Pettit, Rocky. You know. No one ever announced a hockey fight like Lloyd Pettit.
You had to talk to the father about that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're up there doing it right now. Now here's the question. This is kind of tough. Is there any question that Harvey Wittenberg should handle in the public address? What do you mean by that, Bill?
I think they...
You guys know the answer? Good.
Well, I think we know the question.
Yeah, if not, we'll make one up.
Yeah, no, we know the question. I would guess, I feel like Karnak. I believe that the question, is there any room for Harvey Wittenberg at Blackhawks games? Is that the question from the
Bill, is that the question?
person submitted it? Yeah. I think Harvey Wittenberg has a big role with the Chicago Blackhawks on games that Gene Honda cannot make it, and we've also been able to weave in Harvey Wittenberg. For me, Harvey Wittenberg was the voice of the Chicago Stadium. I think he's done a number of games recently. I think Gene Honda might have had commitments to the NCAA tournament, and Harvey is there all the time. We also recently have brought back one of our favorites, Bob Verdi, one of the greatest writers in the history of Chicago. But to touch on Pat Foley for a second, I remember, not many people know this, when we were trying to bring Pat Foley back, I had to spend 3 or 4 different sessions recruiting him at his home in the middle of the day. It was really bizarre. Pat refused to go out in public for fear of what people would say. I had been given permission from Don Levin, great owner of the Chicago Wolves, to speak to him, but he was afraid that this would get out. So I felt like I was recruiting a high school blue chip basketball player, and there aren't many things that I can do well. I think that's probably been blatantly obvious to the people that have been in this room for the last hour and a half. But one thing I can really do well, I am one of the greatest grovelers you've ever met. And we finally got to a point with Pat where we told him it's a different approach, it's a new day, it's a new way, we need you to come back. And I think having Pat Foley as the voice of the Chicago Blackhawks really has been another integral part in the success of this franchise.
I agree. Amy Sue Mertens, where are you? Raise your hand. There she is. Shy as ever. Come on up, come on up. Amy's question is, I just started playing hockey. I don't think you guys, well, she could be a reserve defenseman. I just started playing hockey, and she's all excited about the Hawks, and she wants you to sign her jersey. And you say we don't have water.
I have a marker.
And she has a marker. And if you need any help with the second name or something, we'll help.
For fear of signing on the wrong spot, I'm going to have Rocky sign first.
How about a big round of applause for this?
Would you like it? Yeah, or how about right here?
I know it's black.
I don't want to do it too much.
You come to the City Club, we give you gifts, 2 mugs.
2 mugs for 2 mugs.
Thank you,
2
John.
1-year memberships to the City Club.
Wow.
Thank you.
Suitable for framing.